Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the chupacabra. The chupacabra comes from Puerto Rico, and this story first originated in 1995 when the first sightings occurred. This demon appears in the form of a creepy sort of animal that some would liken to a dog, but others describe it as being more lizard or even alien-like. The signature of this horrifying creature is its vampirism, as it likes to drain the blood of livestock, especially goats. It is said to have a forked tongue and large eyes with spikes on its back from the neck to the tip of its tail. It is said that he drinks the blood through 3 holes which he punctures in the shape of a triangle on the animal's neck. It is said, however, that they are afraid of water and that they don't know how to swim, so if you are ever to encounter one, you can use that to your advantage. In our number 9 spot today, we have Hanako-san. This is a creature that originated in Japan, with the story coming from the World War II era. Hanako-san is said to be the spirit of a girl who passed away from an airstrike. According to the legends surrounding her, it is said that she can be summoned when you enter the girl's bathroom on the 3rd floor of a building. Once in the bathroom, go to the 3rd stall and knock 3 times and call her name. After this, once you open the stall door, it is said that she will be waiting for you. She appears as a sweet girl, but don't let this fool you. It is said that she actually is there to grab you and drag you to hell through the toilet. Sometimes once you've completed the ritual, when you open the stall door, instead of Hanako-san, you'll find a 3-headed lizard that will condemn you for invading her privacy, and then it will devour you. So really, it's a lose-lose situation no matter what. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Headless Horseman. This is a classic Halloween tale that many of us are likely familiar with. This Halloween sort of figure originated in the 1820 short story The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which was written by author Washington Irving. Little did Washington know that this story and character in particular would go on to have a major influence on pop culture even still. The legend of the Headless Horseman begins in Sleepy Hollow, New York during the American Revolutionary War, and it was here that the horseman was actually a trooper who was killed in the Battle of the White Plains on October 28, 1776. The way he died is quite gruesome, but it is no surprise because, as his name would suggest, he lost his head. While his comrades carried his body off the battlefield, no one was waiting around to collect the pieces of his head. Eventually, when they buried him in the cemetery, he later rose from the dead as a ghost, determined to find his missing head. Some versions of the story have him wielding a jack-o'-lantern as a sort of replacement head. Many versions of this story claim that he rose from the dead on, you guessed it, Halloween, which is exactly why this tale has gone on to become such a classic Halloween story. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Jiangshi. Many different cultures have their own versions of the undead, whether that's something like a vampire character or some sort of zombie. In China, the equivalent is the Jiangshi, which is a creature that is often referred to as a kind of hopping vampire. The Jiangshi, like I just mentioned, they hop around with their arms outstretched, and they are typically depicted wearing official garments from the Qing dynasty, which is where this tale originates from. It is said that the Jiangshi can take someone's life with just one touch as they drain the life force out of you. These guys are usually only out hunting at night, as during the day it is said that they reside in a coffin or another dark place such as a cave. It is said that in order to protect themselves from the Jiangshi, some people will place a slab of wood at the bottom of their door so that the creatures cannot come inside. In our number 6 spot today, we have Philibert. This French legend comes from the time during the French Revolution. At this point, a man named Philibert was a doorman at the Val de Grace Hospital. Philibert wanted a specific liquor that needed to be fetched from the cellar. Unfortunately, he found himself inside of the Paris catacombs while searching for it. He only had one candle and was walking around in the darkness when he realized that he was lost. It is said that Philibert may have also had a few drinks that night beforehand, which I'm sure didn't really help. The candle was blown out, leaving him completely in the dark and unable to find his way out. 11 years later, his body was found, and it was identified by the ring of hospital keys found with him. He was buried in the catacombs in the spot they found his body, with a tombstone describing his death. It is said that every November 3rd, Philibert's ghost comes out to haunt the catacombs. I know, it's not quite Halloween, but it's so close. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Lotus Pond. This urban legend starts off with a young couple who were so in love that they planned to run away together and elope. They made a plan to meet at midnight at the Lotus Pond, and from there they would leave and go start their lives together. When the girl showed up at midnight, she waited for so long, but the boy never showed up. She left the pond and went back into town, and this is when she spotted her boyfriend with another woman. She was so heartbroken and upset that she began crying and could not stop. She was so distraught that she went back to the Lotus Pond where they had planned to meet, and here she drowned herself. Months later, another couple had a plan to meet at the Lotus Pond. The boy got to the pond early and was waiting for his girlfriend to arrive when he heard a female voice say, quote, "I asked you to meet me at midnight, didn't I?" The boy was really confused because this wasn't the meeting time that him and his partner had discussed, and he responded, "No." All of a sudden, two pale white hands reached out of the water and dragged him under the pond, drowning him. Ever since then, it is said that if you are at the Lotus Pond at midnight and you encounter a girl or hear her voice, do not answer her questions or even look at her, or she will get you too. In our number 4 spot today, we have the night hag. The night hag is a creature that comes from Brazil. She is a tall, skinny woman with yellow fingernails, white hair, green teeth, red eyes, and an evil laugh. She creeps across rooftops and watches families while they are inside of their homes. She watches the family eat and waits until one of them happens to go to sleep with a stomach full of food. She waits until you're asleep, which is her moment to strike. She will sneak into your bedroom and sit upon your chest so that you are unable to move, and she sits there and waits for her victim to be partly awake but partly still asleep and completely unable to move, which is what some of us would call sleep paralysis. She thrives off of that feeling of helplessness that her victim has, knowing that despite their best attempts, they are unable to move or call for help. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Morgan House. This house is a very popular tourist development in Kalimpong. Its beauty draws a lot of people to the present-day Heritage Hotel. It used to see a lot of large, elegant parties since the beautiful wood and stone structures are the perfect backdrop, but it is now known as a haunted hotel. It is said that the spirit of Lady Morgan never left the house. It was built specifically for Lady Morgan and her husband to get married, but after she died a premature death, Mr. Morgan had to leave the house. The story goes that Lady Morgan was actually harmed by her husband before her death, so it is said that her ghost is rightfully very unhappy. People have reported being able to hear her high-heeled shoes tapping in the corridor when no one else is around. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Woman Without Hands. This story is about a father who gets offered money by a strange man. The man tells the father that if he gives him whatever is standing behind the mill, then he will give him the money. Unbeknownst to the father, this strange man is actually the devil. The man agrees because he believes that there is only an apple tree standing behind the mill, but to his unfortunate surprise, his daughter was actually standing behind it. Yeah, should have double checked first. When the devil goes to take the daughter away, she fights back, and she is so pure that she is able to resist his grip, but the devil still wants to take something with him. He tells the father and daughter that he will leave if the father will chop off his daughter's hands to give to him. Of course, at first they're like, absolutely not, but then the devil threatened to take the father away if they didn't agree. So unfortunately, that father and daughter apparently had no choice and they were forced to chop off her hands. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Two Realms. To end off this list today, we've got to take it right back to the origins of Halloween, or All Hallows Eve. Legend has it that around this time of year, the veil between our world and the spirit world thins and the two worlds collide. This makes it easier for spirits to cross over to the realm of the living and vice versa. The origins of Halloween date back to the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain. This was a year-end celebration 2,000 years ago that marked the end of summer and harvest and marked the beginning of dark, cold winters, which was often a time marked with death. On the night of October 31st, they celebrated because they believed that the ghosts of the dead were returning to Earth. These ghosts would cause trouble, they'd damage crops, but it was also thought that druids, which were Celtic priests, would be able to make predictions for the future. Aside from these ancient origins, there are many other cultures that have similar types of celebrations, believing the same thing, that the veil between the realms has thinned.
Starting off this countdown, we have Samhain, which I always pronounce as Samhain, but apparently it's Samhain. Don't know how, but okay. Anyways, this was the Celtic festival that was celebrated in Ireland, Scotland, and the Isle of Man. It was said that at this time, the connection between the other world and our world thins, so it makes it easier for spirits and the souls of the dead to come into our world. So they would celebrate the dead and make offerings and sacrifices for them. Another part of this tradition included having the Celtic priest wear dead animal heads and skins and go around making predictions about the future. Most of the stuff they did to celebrate this holiday was done so that the spirits wouldn't get mad at them. Moving on at number 9, we have the deal with the devil. Turns out that jack-o'-lanterns have a pretty dark origin story. They symbolize a deal with the devil gone wrong. So basically, one night a man named Stingy Jack ended up tricking and trapping the devil. He then said he would only let the devil go if he promised that he would never go to hell. I mean, crossing and trying to outsmart the devil is the last thing you should do. So the devil was like, sure my dude, no problem. But what Jack did not realize was that just because he's not going to hell doesn't mean that he's going to heaven. So in the end, when Jack died, he ended up in purgatory, just wandering around for eternity. In the end, he used a turnip and a piece of fiery coal from the devil to create a lantern. That's why it's called Jack-o'-lantern. I think it should have been Stingy Jack-o'-lantern though, that would have been funny. Coming in at number 8, we have the evil spirits. So here is another theory as to how jack-o'-lanterns and pumpkins became associated with Halloween. First off, turnips were used back then before pumpkins. They would hollow out the turnip and carve them into scary faces. This was done in order to scare off any spirits. Then they would light them with a candle or a piece of smoldering coal. The lanterns were then placed in the windows or doorways of their home, hoping that the face they carved was scary enough to scare off the evil spirits and welcome their ancestors inside. In our 7th spot, we have the bats. There are a couple of animals and things that are specifically associated with Halloween, like black bats. How did this happen? Well, there was a creepy myth that many believed from back in the day. The myth was that if a bat was spotted flying around a person's house 3 times, then it meant someone in that house would pass away soon. It was also believed to be bad luck if a bat flew into the person's house. It also meant that someone in the house was going to die. If the bat landed on one person in particular, it meant that that was the person who was dead. In the 1800s, bats were caught drinking the blood of cattle in Central and South America, so people immediately then labeled them as vampires. Then in 1897, Bram Stoker's Dracula depicted vampires shapeshifting into bats, so people were like, yeah, bats and vampires should be feared and they'll come and get you on Halloween. Moving on to number 6, we have these spiders. Spiders are also associated with Halloween. How did this happen? Well, back in the day, they were involved in a number of eerie superstitions. One of them was if a spider falls into a candle or flame and burns up, it meant that witches were nearby. But if you spot a spider on Halloween, it meant that the spirit of one of your ancestors was going to visit you that night. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you are with your ancestors. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the praying for the dead. This is an old school tradition that may have inspired trick-or-treating. So back in the day, people would go around door to door asking for money or food. In return, they said that they would pray for the dead. But here's the thing. If you denied them, then they would get upset and they would trash your front lawn or your garden, etc. So you kind of were obligated to give them treats, or else you'd get the trick. In our 4th spot, we have the Halloween costumes. What are you guys going as for Halloween this year? Let me know in the comments below. Now, how did the whole dressing up for Halloween thing even start? Well, during Samhain, when people thought that spirits were crossing over into their world, there were a lot of people that weren't okay with this. They were like, hell no, I don't want to mingle with these spirits, don't come near me. So they thought if they dressed up as one, that they would be left alone. Like, this is POV, I'm the spirit, like, oh bro, you're not a human, you're just a spirit like me, sick, I'll leave you alone, see you later in the afterlife, or whatever. That's just one theory as to why costumes became associated with Halloween. At number 3 today, we have the sacrifices. So back in the day, the Celts considered November 1st as the day of death. Why? Well, by that time, leaves were falling and it was getting darker earlier on, and it was getting colder. So they believed that their sun god was losing strength and that Samhain, the lord of death, was taking over. So in order to appease Samhain, druid priests would lead worship ceremonies. They would offer horses, cats, black sheep, and even humans. They would shove them into wicker cages and burn them to death. They figured this would appease him and keep the spirits from harming them. In our 2nd spot, we have the trick-or-treating again. Now, this is one of the things that inspired the whole trick-or-treating thing. So continuing on with my last point about the sacrifices, how did they get these sacrifices? Well, druid priests would go house to house asking for animals or humans that would be given over to Samhain. Those that gave up stuff were promised prosperity. Those that didn't were cursed and threatened. Also, it was believed that the wandering spirits would get hungry, so if you set out a treat for them, then they would leave you be and not trick ya. Nowadays, the candy replaced the whole human sacrifice thing, so I'm glad that we changed our ways. I prefer candy. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the fairies. Now you may be thinking, oh, fairies, they're so cute, I'll go as a fairy for Halloween. Well, think again. Back in the day, fairies were evil. It was believed that Halloween was a very important day for fairies, and on that day, they would steal babies, or trick you, or even hurt you. They also apparently would hunt after the spirits of those who passed away and bring them down to the gates of hell. And if you bumped into them as they were doing so, well, you were going with them. I never thought fairies could be so evil, so just saying. Starting us off at number 10.
The disappearance of Cindy Song. Cindy was a university student who was doing what any university student would do on Halloween, and that was having fun at a party. She spent the night out with her friends laughing and hanging out. Then she got a friend to drive her home to make sure that she got back safe. Her friend saw her walking into her apartment building, but that was the last time that anyone would ever see of her. The case was a mystery for a while, but then there was a lead. A man by the name of Hugo Marcus Selinski was suspected in the kidnapping and murder of this poor girl. People say he worked with an accomplice to pull off this crime. Things really started to heat up when police investigated Selinski's home, and they made a horrific discovery. They found a series of dead bodies in the backyard. One of the craziest parts of the story was when the person was suspected in helping Selinski killed Cindy, they actually showed up dead in Selinski's backyard. Then things got even crazier when Cindy's body was never found amongst the many things that were buried in Selinski's property. This opened everything up being a mystery once again.
Coming in at number 9, we have the murder of Taylor Van Dyst. But before I go any further, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out, so please do so. On Halloween night back in 2011, Taylor Van Dyst left a party in Armstrong, Canada, but she never returned home. That was the last time anyone had seen her. What's freaky is that on her way home, she sent a text to her friends saying that she was being creeped on. She was later found dead by the side of railroad tracks. After running tests on the body, DNA of a man named Matthew Forrester was found under her fingernails. He later admitted that he had choked her and hit her on the head 6 times. One of the blows fractured her skull. She passed away a few hours later.
Coming in at number 8 is the murder of Carl Jackson. It's insane to think that something could escalate to this point. Carl Jackson was a simple working man and very young. He was only 21 years old at the time of his murder. He was driving on Halloween night to go to a party. The thing was, he wasn't even going to party. He was going to pick up his girlfriend's son from the party. This guy was just trying to be a good dude. On his way, there were some teenagers who pulled a Halloween trick on him. They hit his car with eggs, and Jackson was obviously angry about this and got out of his car and started screaming at the kids. This makes perfect sense. They just egged your car, and that can really screw up the paint job. Well, I guess one of these teenagers didn't like that he got mad. I don't know what their thought process was, but after Jackson got back into his car, he walked up and shot Jackson. The teenager was later caught and sentenced. I don't know where you get off. You egged a guy's car, you're in the wrong, and because he gets mad you think you can kill him? I'm so happy this kid got caught.
And coming in number 7, we have Liddell Peoples. Honestly, my favorite part of Halloween has to be the candy. Let me know what your favorite thing to get on Halloween. I hated getting like Diet Coke. Like, it's so heavy, and it's like the first couple houses and you gotta carry that around. Well, there's one person that loves her Halloween candy a little bit too much. In fact, he would kill for it. This is a man named Liddell Peoples. In 2011, people bought himself several bags of sweets to snack on, but one of the bags went missing, and things turned deadly. He started to blame his acquaintance, Maria Adams, thinking she stole the bag. Things got escalated, and he ended up stabbing her multiple times. He was immediately arrested, all because of candy. Is this real life right now? This dude must have a serious sweet tooth.
Making our way down the list at number 6, we have the smiley face murders. It was Halloween night and Christopher Jenkins had just left a party, but was not done celebrating. As a result, he hit up a bar with his girlfriend and friends. But sometime after midnight, Chris became separated from the group and got kicked out of the bar. Since his costume had no pockets, his girlfriend was holding onto his wallet and phone. On top of that, he got a drive to the bar, so he had no way to get home. What happened next? No one truly knows. Chris was missing for 4 months until his body was found floating in the Mississippi River. To this day, his death is undetermined. No one knows what truly happened to him. One theory is that he was the victim of the Smiley Face Murders, a group of killers that target college-age white men. All of these victims are found drowned and with a smiley face graffitied nearby. Even though no smiley face was found, some people think that this was still a possibility. Another theory is that he found out that his girlfriend was cheating on him with a married man and threatened to expose him. In fact, the man she was cheating on him with was a police officer. So as a police officer, covering up a murder is on the easier side. Who knows? This case is still a huge mystery though.
Coming in at number 5 is the Pasadena gang shootings. Members of the Bloods wanted to settle a beef in Pasadena and thought that Halloween night would be the perfect opportunity to get the revenge. They drove up on a group of teenagers who were walking out of a party and they started firing into the crowd. People scattered, but these Bloods members were still able to hit several people in the crowd. After the dust settled, 3 people were injured and another 3 were killed. The police investigated after everything was said and done, and it turned out that these gang members actually hit up the wrong party. So these guys rolled up and shot dead a bunch of teenagers who didn't have anything to do with anything they were doing. It's very sad to think about.
In our 4th spot, we have the Angry Marine. Back in 2012 on Halloween night, Daniel Priority, a US Army veteran, was sitting in his wheelchair waiting in line at a restaurant. He was wearing his old Army uniform as he had done every day on Halloween, but 22-year-old Christopher Dabney, a US Marine, thought that Daniel's uniform and wheelchair were fake. He thought that his costume were making fun of injured Army veterans. Well, this enraged him and he ended up punching him twice, knocking him out of his wheelchair completely. It wasn't until later he realized, oh crap, like he's not getting up. I think it's a real situation happening. He definitely needs the use of his wheelchair. I mean, yeah, you messed up big time.
In our 3rd spot, we have Peter Fabiano. Back in 1957, 30-year-old couple Peter and Betty Fabiano had just got into bed when they heard the doorbell ring. Thinking that it was more trick-or-treaters, Peter grabbed a bowl of candy and opened the door. But standing at the door was a woman wearing a mask. She shot Peter in the chest and fled the scene. Later, it was revealed that a woman named Joan Rabble was responsible for this murder. Joan apparently was having a relationship with Peter's wife, Betty. Peter realized his wife was having an affair, and so Betty called it off with Joan. Joan then convinced another woman, Goldine Pizer, to shoot Peter for her. They were both eventually charged with 2nd-degree murder and were sentenced to 5 years to life in prison.
Coming in at number 2 is dressing the part. Back in 2013, Anthony Seabury would be shot and killed by someone who seemed to be a random individual. A few people saw the murder take place, and what made this murder grab headlines wasn't so much that it happened on Halloween, but that it happened on Halloween and that the killer was apparently wearing a mask from the horror movie Scream. It's thought that the killer could have been someone who fantasized about murder from watching horror movies, and when Halloween came around, he saw this as the perfect opportunity to hunt someone down and live out their fantasy. To this day, the person who killed Anthony Seabury has not been caught and could still be on the loose.
And coming in our number 1 spot on this list, we have the Candyman Killer. What a name. Back in 1974, Timothy O'Brien was already and excited to go trick-or-treating. He was probably so excited to see the city and get all the candy that he can handle, little did he know that his dad was evil. Timothy's dad, Ronald, gave him a bunch of candy for him to eat. They were all pixie sticks. You guys remember those things? Those like straw things, you like squeeze it and then down it in like 2 seconds and then you eat like 50 more of them. Sadly, his dad laced them with cyanide. Timothy ate the sticks while he was out trick-or-treating and he later passed out. An investigation was launched and eventually this was traced back to Timothy's father, Ronald, but now the question stood on why did Ronald poison his own kid? Was it meant for other kids? What on earth would bring a parent to do such a thing if that was his true intent? Ronald O'Brien was so deep in debt that he took a huge life insurance policy out on his kids and planned to kill them off so he can get the money for them. So the intentions was there. I mean, like, there's so many other ways to make money, and of course he got caught and now he's not getting any money.
At number 10, we have cannabis edibles. With the rise of mainstream cannabis use, there has been an urban legend circulating that some houses aren't giving out regular gummy bears. Instead, they're putting a supercharged weed edible into your pillowcase disguised as candy. If you're doing this on Halloween and kids come to your house and they say trick or treat, you can say both. In recent years, this has been one of the more popular warnings, everyone telling their kids that they should look out for candy with strange packaging because it might launch them into the stratosphere if they eat it. I mean, this might happen, but I highly doubt it. I don't think anyone is going to spend thousands of dollars on weed edibles just to waste them on a bunch of kids. The last thing someone thinks when they buy a bunch of weed is, let's use this to make sure a bunch of kids have a really good time. No, if someone is buying a massive amount of edibles or making them themselves, they aren't going to try and ruin your Halloween. They're probably just stocking up for the apocalypse so they can still get high while the world is on fire. At number 9, we have the 13th floor. When you go into a building, why is there no 13th floor? We all know the superstition about unlucky number 13 and Friday the 13th. I mean, there's an entire movie series about it that gave birth to one of the most famous horror characters of all time. But there is a great urban legend that merges Halloween and the creepy 13th floor. Apparently way back when the 13th floor was still a thing in buildings, someone decided to put on a haunted house in one. A multi-layered haunted house that spiraled all the way up to the 13th floor. Each level of the house was a different theme and scarier than the last. This 13-layer dip of doom was so scary that most people turned around and headed back to their homes with pee-filled costumes. And those were the lucky ones, because everyone who managed to make their way all the way to the final stage was never heard from again. That's a crummy reward for being the bravest person around. Death? Maybe they were never heard from again because there was a bunch of gold up there and they took it and moved to the Bahamas. Well, that would be better. At number 8, we have LSD tattoos for kids. More drugs for kids. Again, I would like to say no one will do this. Drugs are expensive and no one wants to waste them on your screaming toddler. Although, if I was gonna dose a misbehaving kid with any sort of drug, it would probably be LSD. A few drops in his little sippy cup and I'd be like, hey, deal with your ego, you're annoying to everyone. In the 70s, when LSD was all over the news, a rumor got started that some people were putting LSD in those pressable tattoos for kids. Parents all over America started to throw them out because they didn't want little Timmy to reach a higher plane, man, like really trip out, dog. At number 7, we have college campus murders. Killing a bunch of co-eds all dressed slutty on Halloween night? Wow, so original. If you're gonna be a serial killer, at least bring something new to the table. Killing hot chicks on a spooky holiday is about as original as a seductive vampire movie. Well, this legend started in the 60s and it does have a little bit of flair to it. The legend involves a TV psychic making a prediction that a bunch of people will be killed on a college campus on Halloween night. Everyone goes crazy and college kids are too frightened to run around super drunk and half naked, and they spend their Halloween in their bedrooms watching scary movies, hoping next year they can hook up with someone they'll never talk to again. Of course, this never happened. It was a rumor kicked around probably by some teens. But I don't know, maybe for fun we should all go to a psychic and see if we can get them to tell us about a bunch of grisly murders that are on the horizon. Also, if you're a psychic and you see the future and there's a bunch of people getting massacred, shouldn't you do something about it? At number 6, we have Halloween hitchhiker. You're never really supposed to pick up hitchhikers, but I think you should be extra careful on Halloween night. It's just an extra spooky time, and you don't want some random person on the side of the highway to feel inspired by the date and then chop you into little pieces. The legend of the Halloween hitchhiker is a tale as old as time. A trucker picks up a lady walking on the side of the highway. This is on Halloween night. She gets in, they start to talk for a bit, and the conversation leads her to talking about a gruesome murder that she witnessed. The girl who she describes in the murder is strangely similar to herself. The trucker is starting to get very freaked out. Luckily, they're close to her destination. He lets her out of the cab of the truck, she thanks him, and then when he looks in his rearview mirror to see where she goes, she vanishes. Spooky. At number 5, we have Halloween gang initiation. As time goes on, we get new urban legends that will fit our changing culture. The Halloween night gang initiation was a rumor that got passed around and even made its way onto the news. The public was warned that the world famous gang, the Bloods, was going to be doing a gang initiation on Halloween night. This initiation consisted of them killing 31 women on Halloween. Seems like a bit much. I mean, I've never been in a gang, but I'm sure after the first 15 you'd be like, you know, this guy is very serious. I think we should let him in. I mean, if I had a gang and someone wanted in, all they would have to do is take me on a really nice date and then afterwards give me their Disney Plus password, but I'm just a simple guy. This rumor also got so out of control that the number skyrocketed to 141 women. Thankfully, it was revealed that it was all a hoax, so ladies across the world could go out on Halloween night without worried about being murdered. Well, worried less about being murdered. I don't know how much you normally worry about being murdered. At number 4 we have Where's Mama's Head? A famous Halloween picture of Susan and John Buckley. It shows them standing with their mother, Susan with an axe in her hand, and John with his mother's head in his hands. And also, their mom's decapitated body kneels between them. This picture is over 100 years old and it looks terrifying, and the story behind it is all the kids in the neighborhood were going to get dummies and cut their heads off as a Halloween prank. John and Susan wanted to be the best pranksters in town and they cut off their mom's head. Then they took this photo. The police came to the house and the Buckley siblings were nowhere to be found. What the police did find was their mom's body half eaten. I guess after they killed their mom they were like, wait, who's gonna make dinner? Not a lot of foresight with these two. However, this picture was photoshopped. The two kids never killed their mom and then took a picture with her head. Like I said before, this photo is over 100 years old, so that means there would have needed to be a third person involved to take the picture. There was no like setup camera picture thing back then. And that guy probably would have been like, man, that dummy looks awfully real and awfully familiar. Here's the real photo. At number 3 we have Haunted Halloween Doll. Apparently this urban legend was actually the inspiration for the movie Chucky. It was back in the 1900s and there was a young boy named Robert. He was hanging out doing whatever kids in the 1900s would do, probably throwing rocks and being illiterate, I don't know. Well, it was Robert's lucky day because his maid had a little gift for him. It was a little doll which was also named Robert. Not a very good idea. I mean, if you're gonna give someone a doll, at least give them a doll that doesn't have a name. Shouldn't they be allowed to name it? Well, apparently this doll was named Robert, so it would be forever linked to this boy because it had a voodoo curse on it. Huge bummer. That would be a gift that I would definitely re-gift to someone else. Well, the doll tormented the kid for his whole life until it eventually drove him to kill himself. Ugh, bummer. At number 2 we have Spider Wig. This one is a classic. I had to put it on the list. A girl is trying to throw together a cheap Halloween costume, so she starts going through her grandparents' things. She heads into the basement and finds a bunch of stuff including an old wig and a nice witch's hat. Amazing, she's ready for Halloween night on a budget. She heads over to her friend's Halloween party, but when she gets there, people can't look at her without screaming at the top of their lungs. It is Halloween, but that's not the response you're looking for when people look at you. Well, she starts to feel a weird itching sensation all over her body. She rushes into the bathroom, looks into the mirror, and she sees thousands of little spiders crawling all over her body. You tried to save money and have fun on Halloween, and now you get screwed over. Next time, just go to Spirit Halloween and buy the overpriced wig. And our number 1 spot is the Undying Mask. I'm pretty sure this one got started from a Goosebumps book, but it's about a mask that you put on that you can never take off. The legend goes that someone walks into a mysterious costume shop on Halloween night. They need a last minute costume and they see this mask. It's a mask of an old dying man, and they think, why not? An old dude would be great, easy costume. They take it home, they put it on, and it looks strangely real, like it's attached to their skin. But then the mask won't come off, as if it has become a part of them. They start to freak out. How do I get this thing off my face? So they run back to the costume shop, but it's empty, just a hollow building with nothing in it. The longer they wear the mask, the more the mask becomes a part of them until it takes over their whole body. They become the dying old man that the mask represented. They make a full transformation and then they're never themselves again. Woo!
Coming in at number 10 is the thinning of the veil. The Celts believed that Halloween, known then as Samhain, was the night that the veil between the spirit realm and the living was at its thinnest, allowing spirits and other supernatural forces to descend and cause mischief or harm. To the ancient Celts, people were transformed into cats as punishment for their bad deeds. Now, those unfortunate enough to be cursed by black magic were also turned into cats, particularly black cats. The ancient Celts also felt the need to please the spirits in order to ensure that their population and livestock did not die during the harsh winter. Food and drink were often left for the fairies, and occasionally an animal was sacrificed to appease the spirits. Souls of the departed were believed to revisit their homes seeking hospitality, and in some cases, a place setting of food or drink was put on the dining table in anticipation of the visit. Mumming or wearing disguises were part of the festival and involved people going door to door in costume or disguise, reciting verse in exchange for food. This tradition then transformed into what we now call Halloween. Number 9. Black cats. The idea of being spooked by black cats dates back to the Middle Ages, when these dark felines were considered a symbol of the devil. Now, it didn't help that centuries later, accused witches were often found to have cats, particularly black ones. People began to believe that the cats were witches' familiars, supernatural entities that would assist in their practice of dark magic, or were actually shape-shifting witches themselves. In most Western cultures, black cats have typically been looked upon as a symbol of evil omens, and most of Europe considers the black cat a symbol of bad luck, particularly if one walks across the path in front of a person, which is believed to be an omen of misfortune and death. The black cat in folklore has been able to change into human shape to act as a spy or courier for witches or demons. But in contrast, the supernatural powers ascribed to black cats were sometimes viewed positively. Personally, I see them as a lucky thing, but hey, to each their own. Number 8. Devil's Night. Okay, so it seems like different places have different names for this, but Devil's Night refers to the night before Halloween on October 30th, well, at least where I'm from. It refers to the vandalism and arson of abandoned property during the time before and after Halloween. Now, Devil's Night started many years ago as Mischief Night with mild-mannered pranks such as toilet papering homes or games like Ding Dong Ditch. Now, these pranks, however, evolved into serious acts of vandalism and arson in the 1970s and have continued occurring on the days surrounding the Halloween holiday ever since. Now, Devil Night is believed to have started in Detroit and then quickly spread to other cities along the Rust Belt of the US. With rising unemployment rates, foreclosures, and economic downturns, many buildings in the metro areas were abandoned and left unattended. Now, these former homes became targets for vandals, and in the 1970s to 80s, arson cases in the 3 days and nights surrounding Halloween rose exponentially. Neighbors ended up organizing community watch programs and posted signs on abandoned buildings with the message which read, "This building is being watched," with hopes of deterring vandals. Now, I don't know about you guys, but in my family, we always brought our pumpkins inside that night because we didn't want them to get smashed. Number 7. Crimes. Halloween seems like a perfect time to commit a crime as everyone is dressed up in disguises, and there are many famous crime cases that have happened on Halloween. For example, sometime in the early hours of Halloween 1981, Manhattan couple Ronald Sisman and Elizabeth Platzman had their lives ended in their Chelsea apartment. The couple were severely beaten before being shot execution style, with the apartment completely ransacked. Our prison informant claimed that one of his fellow inmates had predicted the crime weeks before it actually happened. Now, that inmate turned out to be son of Sam, aka David Berkowitz. David had long been rumored to be involved with a satanic cult that helped him with some of his misdeeds. Now, according to the informant, David had told him that his cult was planning to enter a residence near the Greenwich Village, and Chelsea would qualify for that, on Halloween to carry out a ritual slaying. When questioned, David claimed that Ronald had footage of one of the Son of Sam shootings and was planning to hand it over to the authorities in exchange for dropping some controlled substance charges. While no evidence was found to support David's claims, he was basically right about the description of Ronald's apartment, and the crime is still unsolved. Number 6. Carving jack-o'-lanterns. Fun fact, the tradition of carving jack-o'-lanterns originated in Ireland using turnips instead of pumpkins. Now, it's allegedly based on a legend about a man named Stingy Jack who repeatedly trapped the devil and only let him go on the condition that Jack would never go to hell. But when Jack died, he learned that heaven did not want his soul either, so he was forced to wander the earth as a ghost for eternity. The devil gave Jack a burning lump of coal and a carved out turnip to light his way as he would stay on earth forever. Now, locals eventually began carving scary scary faces into their own turnips to frighten away evil spirits, and he became known as Jack of the Lantern or Jack-o'-lantern, hence the name. Number 5. Bobbing for apples. Okay, so this isn't as terrifying, but I wanted to mention it nonetheless. The game of bobbing for apples has been a staple at Halloween parties for many years, but its origins are more rooted in love and romance. The game traces back to a courting ritual that was part of a Roman festival honoring Panoma, the goddess of agriculture and abundance. While multiple versions existed, the gist was that young men and women would be able to predict their future relationships based on the game. When the Romans conquered the British Isles in 43 AD, the Panoma festival blended with the similarly timed Samhain, a precursor to Halloween. Now, it was said when playing this game, whoever successfully bit into an apple first would be the first person in their group of friends to get married. Sometimes girls would even follow another superstition surrounding the game, which claimed that if they put the apple they bit under their pillow at night, they would see who their true love was in a dream. Now, that's just cute. Number 4. Trick-or-treating. So there's much debate around the origins of trick-or-treating, but generally there are 3 theories. The first theory suggests that during Samhain, Celtic people would leave out food to appease the spirits traveling the earth at night. Over time, people began to dress as these unearthly beings in exchange for similar offerings of food and drink. The second theory speculates that the candy bond stems from the Scottish practice of guising, which is a secular version of souling. During the Middle Ages, generally children and poor adults would collect food and money from local homes in return for prayers for the dead on All Souls Day. Geysers dropped the prayers in favor of non-religious practices, with the inclusion of songs, jokes, and other tricks. Now, a third theory argues that modern American trick-or-treating stems from bells nickeling, a German-American Christmas tradition where children would dress in costume and then call on their neighbors to see if the adults could guess the identities of the disguised. In one version of the practice, the children were rewarded with food or other treats if nobody could identify them. But hey, getting free candy sounds good to me. Number 3. Witches. America's witch scare, which culminated in the infamous Salem witch trials, were a series of hearings and prosecutions of people accused of witchcraft in colonial Massachusetts between February 1692 and May 1693. More than 200 people were accused and 30 people were found guilty, 19 of whom were executed by hanging. Now, women vastly outnumbered the men in the ranks of the accused and executed. According to author Carol F. Carlson's The Devil in the Shape of a Woman, 78% of 344 alleged victims in New England were female. And even when men faced allegations of witchcraft, it was typically because they were somehow associated with an accused woman. Women held a precarious, mostly powerful position within the deeply religious Puritan community. The Puritans thought women should have babies, raise children, manage household life, and model Christian subservience to their husbands. Recalling Eve and her sinful apple, they also believed that women were more likely to be tempted by the devil. So when women were not behaving, they'd be accused of being a witch. It was incredibly misogynistic and a dark time in history. Number 2. Bad candy. Every time I finished trick-or-treating, my parents made me dump out all my candy so they could check for anything bad like needles, open candy, or drugs. Now, was this something just made up for fear-mongering, or did our parents just want to steal some of our candy? Well, it turns out there's some truth behind this. On Halloween 1974, Timothy O'Brien ate some Halloween candy that was spiked with cyanide. Now, to be fair, it was his father who spiked the candy, motivated by the huge life insurance on his son. But razor blades, sewing needles, and even poison have been found in candy, as police forces across North America have reported cases of these objects in treats for decades. The first report of Halloween treats being tampered with in North America was in 1959. That Halloween, a California dentist named William Shy distributed 450 laxative-laced candies, which resulted in 30 people falling ill. He was later charged with outrage of public decency and unlawful dispensing of drugs. Another high-profile case made headlines in 1964 when a 47-year-old mother in Greenlawn, New York named Helen Fell handed out bags of treats containing arsenic-laced ant traps, metal mesh scrubbing pads, and dog biscuits. Now, almost all tampering cases involve sharp objects rather than poisoning, and 3/4 of them resulted in no injuries, and the rest only resulted in minor injuries. No trick-or-treaters have ever died by eating a Halloween candy from a stranger, so that's good. And fun fact, trick-or-treating skyrocketed in popularity by the 1950s, when Halloween became a true national event. Today, over 179 million Americans celebrate the holiday and spend about $9.1 billion annually in the process. And coming at number 1 is real Halloween decorations. Do you ever see someone's house decorated for Halloween and go, wow, those decorations are so good and look so realistic? Well, what if I told you that some decorations look so realistic because they are real? In 2015, an Ohio community was left in shock after a woman who had her life ended and was found hanging from a fence was mistaken for a Halloween decoration. Then in 2009, the porch of Mustafa Muhammad Zaid displayed a corpse around Halloween time. Now his neighbors were impressed, but seeing how no one rang his doorbell to check up on him or asked where he purchased the prop, no one could tell that it was indeed their dead neighbor's body. When reported to police, it was discovered that Zaid was dead and rotting on his own porch with a gunshot wound to the head lodged in his eye socket. Now 2014 was another bad year for convincing Halloween decorations, as when a man dragged a headless body out of his apartment and kicked the head onto the other side of the street, people thought it was a Halloween prank. Now the truth only came to light later when a person tried to move the dead body out from the middle of the street and realized it was a real person. Not to mention all the hanging bodies over the years that people thought were decorations but were indeed real people. There are so many cases of this and it is so disturbing. Coming in at number 10 is the backseat passenger. This story goes, late on Halloween night, a nurse was driving home from work when she noticed a car that seemed to be following her. The driver began sporadically flashing the high beams on and off. Now the nurse sped up and the car behind her sped up too. She then called 911 and told the police that someone was chasing her. The dispatcher told her to stop her car and get out of it immediately. Now the nurse thought the dispatcher had lost her mind, but just then a police car pulled in front of her, forcing her to stop. The dispatcher told her once more to get out and go to the police car. She emerged from the car and one of the police officers told her to get in the back seat of his car. She noticed the two officers had their weapons drawn and that the car that was following her had stopped several yards behind her. The nurse didn't know what to expect. The first cop walked towards the driver's side of the car while the other moved around the passenger's side. They stood up with their weapons and flashlights aimed at the back seat. Hands up, drop the knife, and get out of the car, one officer yelled. Now the nurse watched as the police officers dragged a man from the back of her car. She later discovered that the car flashing its lights was driven by a woman who noticed the man rise up from the back seat holding what she thought was a knife. She immediately called 911, and each time the man rose up back seat, the woman flashed her lights. Coming in at number 9 is Halloween tattoos. The story goes, two girls' cousins went trick-or-treating together every year. One year when they returned home, the girls were thrilled to discover they'd each received a unicorn temporary tattoo. They showed the tattoos to their moms, who thought they were a clever idea to give to trick-or-treaters. The girls quickly applied the tattoos to their arms, and within a few minutes, their moms noticed they were acting strangely. It was almost as if they were drunk, or worse, The moms scooped up their daughters and rushed them to the emergency room, where doctors believed the girls had been drugged. The police confiscated all their candy, but the lab reports showed no drugs. The next day, after the two girls had recovered, one of the moms was picking up her daughter's Halloween costume from the floor when she noticed the used tattoo packaging. She grabbed a plastic bag and took it to the police station, and the lab report on the tattoo revealed that it had been laced with an hallucinogenic. Seems like you can't trust anything you get trick-or-treating these days. Number 8. Mary Arm. Bloody Mary was known for ending the lives of young women and bathing in their blood as a way to maintain her youth. Now, this story is very popular, and playing the game Mary at sleepovers is extremely common. Now, one Halloween night, 3 young girls decided to see if they could conjure Mary from the spirit world. They lit a candle and turned off the lights in the bathroom. Holding the candle in front of them, the 3 girls stood in front of a bathroom mirror and chanted, "Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary." They held their breath, waiting for the evil woman to appear in the mirror, but nothing happened, so they repeated. This time, they saw a shadow moving behind them, but before they could turn around, the frightening face of a woman flashed in the mirror. Now the girl screamed in terror and the one holding the candle dropped it. Rolling across the ceramic floor, the candle's flame went out. Now darkness engulfed them and the girls clawed at the doorknob trying to open the door. I feel her hand on my shoulder. One girl sobbed and released a blood-curdling scream that made the other girls panic even more. Eventually they got the door open and fell out of the bathroom. Now the girl who felt the hand touch her found 3 claw marks tracked down her arm. Hey, so be warned, not only can you see Mary, but she can see you and cause harm. Number 7. Razor blade candy. This seems to be an old wives' tale, but this story goes, one Halloween, a boy and his friends decided they wanted a bigger candy haul than last year. After they had gone to every house in their neighborhood, they then decided to walk a few blocks to another neighborhood. After all, with costumes, no one would recognize that they didn't belong there. Right? Now eventually the boys were pleased with all the candy they received, so they went home and sat down on the porch to empty their bags of candy. They compared the candies they had, and one opened a candy bar and bit down on it. It oozed from his mouth and he cried out in agony. His parents rushed onto the porch to find that he had bitten into a razor blade that had sliced off his tongue that now lay on the porch floor in front of him. His mouth also had several cuts. Now the ambulance came and they took the boy to the hospital where doctors managed to stitch up his mouth and reattach his severed tongue. The police warned parents against allowing their children to trick-or-treat at homes of people they don't know, and parents should always check the candy to ensure it hasn't been tampered with before allowing their children to eat it. Number 6. The Hook. This is a classic Halloween story. It goes, after leaving a friend's Halloween party, a boyfriend and girlfriend decided to drive the short distance to their favorite lake park. The teenagers arrived at the spot to find it vacant, and it was a beautiful romantic setting with a full moon shimmering on the water. The boy scrolled through his playlist to find perfect music when both of their phones beeped with the police alert, warning everyone to be on the lookout for a man with a prosthetic hook who had been seen fleeing the scene of a crime that ended someone's life. The two teenagers realized that the address of the crime scene was only a couple blocks from where they were parked. They decided to leave the park, but when they tried to start the car, the engine wouldn't turn on. They tried several times, and finally the engine coughed to life, and they sped out of the park. They talked about their Halloween not ending quite the way they wanted, and the girlfriend suggested that they go back to her house to watch a scary movie. Now when they arrived at her house, they parked in the driveway behind her parents' cars. The girlfriend got out and turned back to wait for her boyfriend, but hanging from her car door was a prosthetic hook. Now they could have been the hookman's next victim, but they were smart and went home. Finally, a smart couple in this version of the story. Number 5. The Legend of Stingy Jack. The tradition of carving jack-o'-lanterns originates in Ireland using turnips instead of pumpkins. It's allegedly based on a legend about a man named Stingy Jack who repeatedly trapped the devil and only let him go on the condition that Jack would never go to hell. But when Jack died, he learned that heaven did not want his soul either, so he was forced to wander the earth as a ghost for eternity. Now Jack crafted a makeshift lantern by carving out a humble turnip and illuminating it with a single piece of coal bestowed upon him by the devil himself. Thus, the first jack-o'-lantern was born, forever cementing its place in the eerie lore of Halloween as locals eventually began carving scary faces into their own turnips to frighten away evil spirits. He became known as Jack of the Lantern or Jack-o'-lantern, hence the name. Number 4. The Vanishing Hitchhiker. This classic urban legend passed down through generations tells the eerie tale of a driver navigating through the darkened streets on Halloween night. While driving around at night, a young man sees a hitchhiker. He decided to pick him up, and the hitchhiker was shrouded in mystery and intrigue. As the car proceeds along the road, the driver feels a sense of unease. Then, suddenly, without warning, the hitchhiker vanishes into thin air, leaving behind only an item of clothing or forgotten personal possession. Now the unsolved mystery lingers, haunting the driver's memory forever. Now if this happened to me, I would freak out. Now was this hitchhiker actually a ghost? I just have so many questions. Number 3. Anne Boleyn. With a history of torment and execution going back over 900 years, the Tower of London is regarded by many as one of the most haunted places in the UK. It was originally built in 1078 by William the Conqueror and has served a significant role in the history of England ever since. Now there have been many reports of paranormal activity at the Tower of London London over the years. Now the most famous of all the ghosts that live within its walls is Anne Boleyn's ghost, the wife of King Henry VIII. Throughout the years, her untimely demise has given rise to numerous chilling accounts of her ghostly apparitions, particularly on the eerie night of Halloween. You see, she was beheaded in 1536, and her headless body has been seen walking the tower's corridors and often near the spot of her demise. Number 2. Black Cats. Another more persistent Halloween urban legend centers around Satanists and sacrificing black cats. The connection between black cats and Halloween goes way back. Tales of sacrificing black cats during the Druid celebration of the Lord of the Dead date back 2,000 years. Now during the Middle Ages, there was a belief that witches could disguise themselves as black cats. Many people accused of witchcraft were burned alongside their feline companions. Now while there's no proof that Satanists have ever harmed a single black cat on Halloween or otherwise, many animal shelters have refused to adopt black cats in the weeks leading up to Halloween. Myths about black cats include it's bad luck to have a black cat cross your path, don't turn your back on a black cat because it will curse you, and if a black cat gets in the bed of a sick person, it's an omen of death. But in reality, they are just cute animals, just leave them alone. And coming in at number 1 is the clown statue. Do you remember in 2016 when there were clowns running all over the place? Well, some people said it was just a joke, while others dubbed them killer clowns, so what's really the truth? While some seemed like pranks, it seems like others used a clown costume to commit crimes. Now this urban legend came way before this, but it's still just as spooky. It's said on Halloween night a young girl was babysitting her 2 neighbors at their house. While there was a clown statue in the living room that made her uncomfortable. It was Halloween though, so she figured it was just a decoration. She put the 2 siblings to bed and sat in the living room to watch TV as the clown statue continued to unnerve her. And the mother called to check in, and the babysitter asked if she could cover the clown statue with a blanket. The mother is then confused, saying, "We do not own a clown statue." Now it turns out that the statue was actually a real person trying to commit a crime. When the girl gets off the phone with the mother, she begins to call 911 when the clown attacks her and ends her life. Yeah, I remember hearing this story when I was younger, and it made me scared to babysit. Because what if some sick person tried to do this in real life? It is scary.
Starting us off at number 10 is costume or reality. Halloween Day 1957. Betty Fabiano and her husband Peter were winding down and getting ready for bed when the doorbell rang. Despite it being past 11 PM, they assumed that maybe it was a group of late night trick-or-treaters, and since they had some candy left, and so Peter went downstairs to answer the door and was greeted with a man wearing a mask. Betty heard some muffled voices downstairs, kind of like a man was impersonating a woman's voice, then a pop, and then a thumb. She ran downstairs to discover Peter lying on the ground in a pool of blood with a gunshot wound on his chest. He died on the way to the hospital, and suspects were hunted down immediately. Now here is like the biggest plot twist of plot twist history. Now the couple had their fair share of trouble, and while separated at one point, Betty started seeing a woman called Joan. That's not the plot twist, by the way. They decided to take another jab at their marriage, and Peter's only condition was that Betty could never see or speak about Joan again, to which she agreed. Joan obviously then had a motive and was questioned, and things she was saying just weren't adding up. She claimed that she was home all night, but neighbors claimed she left on a drive for a very long time. An anonymous tip led the police to the murder weapon, and then the assailant, 40-year-old Goldine Pizer. She admitted to killing Peter under the spell of a woman she was in love with, and that woman was Joan. Now coming in at number 9 is Don't Touch My Candy, Halloween Day 2011. A 55-year-old man residing in Chicago realized at 2:30 PM that his bag of candy was missing. Call the police. Now I don't know if that's referring to his bag of candy that he got during trick-or-treating, or the bag he was using to give candy to kids. I mean, you could be 50 and trick-or-treating. I'm not gonna judge you. Who am I to judge you? Either way, suddenly outraged by this realization, the man blamed his neighbor Maria Adams for stealing it, even though she really didn't. The man grabbed a bunch of steak knives from his kitchen and headed to her house, where he ended up stabbing her countless times. Maria desperately tried to defend herself by throwing plates at him, but it was just no use. She was in critical condition by the time she got to the hospital and ended up dying the next morning. The man was charged with first-degree murder and aggravated domestic battery. Can we just take a second, please, to just realize how ridiculous this is. Like, I simply just do not get it. He killed a woman over a bag of candy. Like, unless that bag had the secret of a life in it or the elixir of immortality, it's just not that deep. Get a new bag. At number 8 we have The Disappearance, Halloween Day 1955. Mother of 2 Marilyn Damon stopped at a food fair on Long Island to do a quick bit of shopping. She left 2-year-old Stephen and 7-month-old Pamela outside the store and told Stephen to watch his little sister. First of all, a 2-year-old cannot be left alone to watch anyone else. Like, that is still baby as hell. Like, what are you doing? 10 minutes later she came out and both children were nowhere to be found. Freaking the hell out, Marilyn starts looking everywhere and thankfully finds Pamela nearby, still in her stroller unharmed, but Stephen was still nowhere to be found. 5,000 people searched for him the next day, but detectives and police were never able to solve the case or find him. Honestly, I feel bad about it, I really do, but also you can't leave your kids alone ever, especially if they're that young. Like, a 2-year-old can't even defend themselves from anyone, how are they meant to defend their younger sibling as well? Like, Marilyn, you should have known better. 2 years old! What can you even do at 2 years old? Nothing! Can you even walk? No, you probably can. You know what I mean, it's young. Now, filling on number 7 slot is The Note, Halloween Day 2012. Now, Julie Keith was on her way to Kmart to buy some quick last-minute cheap Halloween decorations in her hometown of Damascus, Oregon. That was a lot to say in one breath. Either way, inside the graveyard kit that she purchased, she found a handwritten letter from an inmate at the Chinese labor camp that had made the kit. The letter pleads for the reader to send it to the World Human Rights Organization because thousands of people were suffering in China. The writer claimed that them, along with a lot of other workers in the Massanjia labor camp, were forced to work 15-hour days with no weekends or holidays. If they refused, they would get tortured or beat and only got paid 10 yuan a month, which is about $1.61 a month. A month! The letter wasn't signed, but Julie did pass it on to the organization and Kmart launched their own investigation into it as well. Thankfully, months later the labor camp was exposed and the inmates were freed. Woohoo, we love a happy ending! Now at number 6 is The Prank Gone Wrong, Halloween Day 1998. 21-year-old Carl Jackson was driving through the Bronx with his girlfriend to pick up her son from a Halloween party. While stopped at an intersection, a bunch of teenagers started throwing eggs at his car, and so he got out to confront them. No one's about to throw eggs at me when my girl's in the car. I'll front on them. I'll square up. That's me as Carl. Either way, one of the teens, 17-year-old Curtis Sterling, pulled out a handgun and straight up shot Carl in the head, killing him instantly. And egging people on Halloween is quite a common prank, but it's gone awry so many times. Curtis ended up being sentenced to 20 years in prison, and every year on Halloween he gets a card from Carl's mother saying, "I'm glad you're still there." And honestly, kudos to her, I would do the exact same thing. What a senseless, unnecessary killing. Like, I'm getting mad at this list, I really am. It's pissing me off. Coming in at number 5 is The Mailman, Halloween Day 2012. Halloween is always a lit time, it's very scary, to the point some people claim they get scared to death. Exaggeration. Pussies. Now, a mailman in Denver was on his route making his deliveries and he showed up at one house that had a corpse decoration on its porch. Sort of annoyed at the placement of the decoration, he sort of sidestepped it out of the way to the side and delivered the mail. As he was walking away, he realized it wasn't a decoration from any angle. It was a real man that was dead. Turns out the dead man, Delport, had collapsed and died on his porch when returning from his night shift, but because of the timing of Halloween, it just didn't look sus. Honestly, you guys, imagine dying and someone thinking you're a Halloween decoration and just moving your body to the side. Like, biggest L I'd ever take, and I'm not even bloody alive. That's the biggest L. At number 4 is The Costume Gone Wrong. Wow, I need to think of better names because I already did Prank Gone Wrong. Sorry about that. Either way, Halloween Day 2012. An 8-year-old girl was so excited to dress up for Halloween in her hometown in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. She was at a relative's bonfire that night and went to play on the hillside when her aunt Janet saw her in the bushes. Assuming she was a skunk because of her black outfit, hat, and white tassel, she asked her son to shoot the pest. So Thomas went in and got the gun and shot the girl in the shoulder and abdomen. As soon as they realized the grave mistake that had happened, she was helicoptered to Pittsburgh Children's Hospital straight away. She remained in critical condition but did actually survive. What a close call. Like, oh my god, I would have never been able to live with that if I was Thomas or Janet. Like, killing my relative because I thought they were a skunk? Ugh, that would have been an even bigger L. Such an L. Filling our number 3 slot is Bad Candy, Halloween Day 1974. 8-year-old Timothy O'Brien was going trick-or-treating with his dad and sister in Pasadena, Texas. They got to a house where no one answered the door, and getting impatient, the kids ran off to the next house while their dad Ronald stayed behind. He re-emerged a few minutes later with a few pixie sticks, saying the person did come out and give it to him for his kids and their friends. They went home and Timothy had his pixie stick and started complaining that his stomach was hurting. Then he ran to the bathroom vomiting and convulsing, and eventually went limp in his dad's arms and died on the way to the hospital. Turns out the pixie sticks he had a lethal dose of potassium cyanide in it. The police then went into panic mode trying to locate the other kids that had those same pixie sticks, and thankfully none of the other kids had ended up eating them, but they were all found with enough cyanide in them to kill 3 to 4 adults in each one, not even all together. Ronald was never suspected until the investigation revealed he was over $100,000 in debt and could never hold down a job. He had 21 in the past few years. 21 jobs? What the hell? Turns out he had taken out a total of $60,000 worth of life insurance on his kids, which his wife was unaware of. He ended up killing his son to get the insurance and gave the candy to the other kids as well, just to lessen suspicion. You are complete and ultimate trash if you murder a family member, especially your own kid. Like, getting triggered. Stop getting triggered. Now at number 2 is Heads Will Roll, Halloween Day 2014. So Halloween decorations are always a good time, and that night a man was seen dragging a headless body out of his apartment and just leaving it on the street. Just casual, really. He came back out a few minutes later with the head and then proceeded to kick it to the other side of the street. And I know you're probably wondering what the hell onlookers thought of this, and most of them just thought it was a prank or that the man didn't want to use the decoration anymore. Either way, it was only an hour or so later when someone actually tried to move the body from the middle of the street did they realize the decoration wasn't a decoration. It was a real decapitated body. Turns out the body was Patricia Ward's, and her murderer was her son, who had a history of mental illness. He decapitated her, left her body on the street, and then killed himself by jumping in front of a train. This just ended well for no one, not Patricia, not her son, and not the person who moved her body. Like, no. Not happily ever after. And finally, at number 1 is The Cradle Snatcher, Halloween Day 1977. George Carter had just put his 19-month-old Nima into her crib in their home in Oklahoma. The next morning, he woke up to find the child missing from her cradle, despite all the windows and doors being locked. It's believed the abductor was hiding in her closet that night and snuck the child out when the parents fell asleep. A month later, a group of kids playing in an abandoned house 4 blocks away from the Carter home were horrified when the decomposed body of an infant came tumbling out of the house's fridge. That child ended up being Nima, but it doesn't even end there. Now, before the Carters lived in that house, it was home to another family that had 2 twin daughters. The year beforehand, the 3.5-year-old girls were stolen and lured out of their house in broad daylight. They were taken to a house by their frequent babysitter, 17-year-old Jacqueline Rubidoux, who told them to get in the fridge and that their aunt would come get them later for some ice cream. A few days later, cries were heard from the fridge by a few children playing in the house next door, so they went inside the house to find out what it was. One of the children opened the fridge door to find Tina jumping out at them. She had managed to stay alive by breathing through a hole in the fridge, but her twin had died from asphyxia. And you know who else called on Jacqueline to watch their child? Nima's parents. Tina even told officers that Jackie Boo was the one who took them to the house, but it failed to lead to a conviction because there was no physical evidence, despite her being shady as hell and the child literally identifying her. But let's just not believe her, shall I? Let's just not believe her.